I'm sure," my mum said, before changing the subject. "Cup of tea? And can you stop sitting on the table, please?" "I don't think a cup of tea will fix things this time," Emma snapped. "Tea won't bring Sarah back, will it?" And I wasn't sitting, I was leaning. Her voice broke, and I recognised she was close to tears. She took a step away from the table. "I thought you didn't care," my thought came from nowhere. I watched as my mum pulled her closer into a hug. I wished I could hug the pair of them and tell them I hadn't gone anywhere. Again, part of me resented them for not sensing my spirit. I expected Paul to sense I was still around, but he hadn't. Mum and Emma were my blood though. That had to count for something, but clearly not. "I'm still here," I said as my cheeks flooded with tears. I thought I was no longer capable of producing them. I lifted my hand to wipe them away, but they weren't even real tears, just imagined. My face felt like it should have been damp, but it wasn't. I assumed it resembled the experience of someone who loses an arm or leg, but imagines pain where the missing limb used to be. Phantom tear syndrome, I decided. Typical. I spent my whole life being strong and never crying, except under extreme circumstances. Now I wanted to cry over my early death and I couldn't. "I don't want to be here anymore," I said. I closed my eyes and allowed myself to be swallowed by the darkness again. "Are you ready?" a voice asked from somewhere in the empty space I called the nothingness. "Are you talking to me?" I asked. "Do you see anybody else?" "No, but I can't even see you," I replied. "I'm sorry about that." There was a sound like a switch, followed by a buzzing. A light came on from above me. Despite looking up, I couldn't establish its source. I guessed the person responsible for the light didn't have to pay an energy bill. The walls were white, and there was no sign of the owner of the voice. The lift materialised again, near enough for me to see both buttons lit up. I had time to reflect on events since discovering my own body in the morgue. Questions were starting to form in my mind. Did someone intend for me to pick one? Up or down? Instructions would have been helpful. It wasn't too much to ask. Normal lifts have a notice informing you what to do in case of an emergency. Why shouldn't this lift? Waking up in a morgue next to your own corpse and then stepping out into a lift that appears from nowhere and being given a choice of up or down felt like as much of an emergency than any other. I shouldn't be the one to make that choice. It seemed obvious that I would choose up. Nobody would want to go down. "No," I called out. "I can't go. Not yet." It couldn't be that simple, and I still wanted to find out who killed me. "But you said you didn't want to stay," the voice reminded me, imitating surround sound coming through the walls. My eyes managed to make out this form, but the light from above us became too bright for me to see his features. He seemed to be a person, though, with 2 arms and legs. A little tall, maybe, but not. "Yes," I admitted, "but I'm not ready to leave either. I can't leave my family and Paul. And I don't know what happened. How did I die?" "Okay," he said with that one word. He vanished, taking the light with him. I was bathed in darkness for a few seconds before I found myself back at my mum's house. "Hey, come back! I need answers," I yelled. Silence. "Hello!" I ran past my mum and her cup of tea, through the closed door and outside into the street, but there was no sign of him. "Get back here, you!" I began. "Hey, keep the noise down. You're giving me a headache," a man who had just walked past said as he turned to glare at me. His eyes were bloodshot and his hair looked like it had never met a comb. "You can see me?" I looked around to make sure he wasn't talking to anyone else. "Of course I can see you. I can bloody hear you too. Keep it down, please. I've got a hangover." He rubbed the front of his head. "Oh my God, you can see me!" I gasped. "Oh no, you're one of them, aren't you?" The man looked around at the rest of the street, then back at me. "Fine," he relented. "I can see you. Follow me if you must, but don't talk. I refuse to stand around here looking like a lunatic who's talking to himself." I followed him to his house across the street in silence, which was more difficult than I expected. "What do you want?" he demanded after shutting the door. I couldn't resist looking around at the interior of the house. Because of the open plan set up downstairs, I saw straight into the lounge area and the kitchen beyond it. Even from that distance, it was obvious he wasn't exactly house proud. My sense of smell died with me, but my mind filled in the blanks, making me gag at the thought of excessive dust, stale unwashed dishes, and mould-ridden food from the overflowing bin. I reminded myself I wasn't there for a Better Homes photo shoot though. What do you mean? I asked, not commenting on the domestic disaster all around me. It wasn't easy, but being dead and unable to catch anything helped. If I was alive, I would have gotten out of there and had a week of continuous showers, possibly scrubbing off my skin and ended up bleeding to death. Death by excessive scrubbing, or murder, which was worse? Well, you people always want something, he said. You people? I questioned, wondering if he was ghostist, if that was even a real term. I mean ghosts, dead people or whatever. You realise you're dead, right? No shit, Sherlock. The only reason I followed him home was the hope of a two-sided conversation and some help getting answers, not for him to point out the obvious. Fine, if you don't want my help, sod off. He pointed out as if that was my only way out. I'm sorry, I forced out the words. I haven't been social for a while. Maybe it's because I keep talking to people and they won't talk back because they can't hear me. Well, I don't have that luxury, so what do you want? I need to find out what happened to me. You don't remember how you died? No, it's all a blank. The police went to my mum's house. Maybe I was murdered, I suggested, not wanting to think of the possibilities, though the image of arms gripping my arms replayed in my head. The image might be anything. Something I watched on television, someone who wanted to hurt me, or Paul being affectionate. The feeling behind me made me feel anything but affectionate. I sensed a hint of recognition and fear as if someone I knew was trying to hurt me. The memory loss happens for a reason. Whatever you learn, you might wish you hadn't, he said. I want to know, I insisted. How could I pass on or whatever I was meant to do, while conscious of the fact that the person responsible for ending my life might not be a stranger? All right then, what's your name? He asked. I'll look into it for you, see if I can find out anything. Sarah, I told him. Sarah Winters. Thank you for anything you can find. I returned home in the evening. I still called the house in Salford Keys my home, even though I suppose it wasn't anymore. The fact that Paul was starting to go through my belongings and pack them up confirmed how things would never go back to the way they had been before. There was no chance of me getting back in my body and not being dead anymore. I needed to accept that, but moving on seemed like an impossibility without closure. I wish you were here, Paul said to the stuffed bear he'd bought me on my last birthday, but I figured he meant me and not the bear. But I am here, I replied. He carried on packing until he picked up a photograph of us together on my 15th birthday party. I'd avoided him since the playground incident, but my mum let me invite everyone in my class. He was in my class that year. Paul surprised me when he turned up. I assumed he hated me, but it turned out he'd grown up since then. We spent most of my party talking. My mum intervened for the last hour and made sure I talked to some other of my guests, who, in her words, came here to celebrate your birthday, young lady. Other than talking to Paul, the party was lame, with 80s music and a caterpillar cake, which would have been more suited to a 7-year-old. It tasted good though, chocolate and sugary goodness. I rested my hand over my stomach, wishing I could eat cake, or anything else. I took food for granted, the smell, the taste, and that satisfied feeling at the end of a meal. Paul understood all of that. It is why he became a chef. I smiled at my memories while I watched Paul in the present moment. He was trying so hard to carry on. I saw it in his eyes, but he never liked to give up. This was no exception. He lay down on the bed, keeping to one side this time, as if he expected me to come back and join him at any moment. I wished I could, to tell him it had all been a mistake. I wasn't dead, everything was going to be all right. But those were all lies. Even if I lied to Paul, he wouldn't be able to hear me anyway. People who have lost a loved one always have different stories about the grief and how hard the loss is for them, but nobody ever mentions how difficult it is for their loved one. To watch everyone else getting on with their lives or grieving, which is worse? I still can't say. I hovered above my side of the bed, then turned my head to look at Paul while he drifted off to sleep. I miss you, I murmured as I closed my eyes. I miss you too, he said. My eyes shut open. It took all my self-control not to shriek that he heard me. If he really could hear me, I didn't want to freak him out by shouting in his face. Paul? I allowed myself to say, hoping I hadn't imagined it. He sprang up and switched on the bedside lamp, looking all around the room, including the bed and the wardrobe. Seriously, I demanded. Why would I be in the wardrobe? It didn't matter though, because he couldn't hear me anymore. His eyes stared past me, then he walked through me on his way to the bathroom. He heard me, I said as I peered in front of the one person able to see me. Yes, I'm fine, thanks. How are you? Please come in. Steve sat on the sofa staring at the television, even though it was on standby. I'm sorry. Had I left my manners somewhere in the afterlife? Or did I never have them to start with? I don't even know your name, I told him. You're not interested in knowing my name, he told me. Yes, I am, I argued. No, you're not. Come on, I told him. It can't be that bad. What is it? Edmund? Lucio? No. Worse, I teased. Dracula? You're being silly now, he said, trying not to smile. You seriously want to know my name? Yes, I exclaimed. It's Steve. Oh, well, that's boring. Why didn't you want to tell me? The ghosts, I mean, they never ask, he replied. It's nice to meet you, Steve. I'd shake your hand, but. Yeah, sorry, he looked away. I can't help you with that. Anyway, who heard you? What? When you burst into my flat without knocking or banging your chains or whatever, you were yelling that someone heard you. Oh, yeah, Paul. I couldn't believe I'd forgotten. I was hovering next to Paul. He was asleep, or almost asleep. I said something to him, then he replied. I stopped for a breath, even though I didn't need to breathe anymore. The routine of taking in air must have remained imprinted in my mind. And you're sure he heard you? He wasn't talking in his sleep? I'm sure, I insisted. Okay, Steve responded. It can happen sometimes when the brain is relaxed. It's more open to sounds it wouldn't pick up on while in a more focused state of mind. If he was falling asleep, that would explain it. So I could talk to anyone if they've fallen asleep. Falling asleep or in a relaxed state, sometimes, Steve said. I looked at him and saw that he was reading from the open book he held. I also noticed the numerous shelves of books about ghosts and afterlife on two large bookcases made of cheap plastic. The bookcases and the books they contained may have been the only area in Steve's house that he ever gave attention to when it came to cleaning. There wasn't a speck of dust on them. He valued his books, if nothing else. You're like an expert on this stuff, I realised out loud. When you see your first ghost at primary school, then go home and tell your parents, only for them to act like you're making it up, you realise you can't talk to anyone about it. You have to find out things for yourself. That sounds awful, I said, paying close attention to Steve's appearance. He could use a shave and seemed a little gaunt. His light brown hair still lacked the first meeting with a comb, and his eyes looked weary. From the look of his plain black jeans and creased grey t-shirt, complete with various food stains, it had been a few days since he'd changed clothes or even had a wash. He could be attractive if he put in the effort, though. I dealt with it, he shrugged. How do you deal with something like that? I discovered that if I was off my face, I could block them all out. I got halfway through studying for my journalism degree while I was high. That's better than I could have done without the drugs, with them bothering me all the time. I understood he meant ghosts like me, but I chose not to take offence. Why did you drop out? I asked, picking up on the part where he got halfway through his studies. You don't want to hear this. I shall appear in your home, I began, as I glanced around at the chaos, demanding that you help me, even though I don't know you. The least I can do is learn a little about you. I mean, I've got time. I'm not getting any older. I smiled, then giving what I hoped was a defiant expression as I waited for him to respond. The fact that I'd waited so long to ask about his life caused me to wonder if I had always been so selfish, or if it was a side effect of being dead. One night before an important exam, the drug stopped working, and this woman, I mean the ghost of a woman, she wouldn't leave me alone. I took more pills to help me study in peace. You overdosed, I guessed. It wasn't intentional. I wanted to study for the exam, but after that I dropped out. I became the freak who tried to kill himself. What could I say? I did it to block out the ghosts. I see how that would have made everything worse. Sorry, I said, wishing I had solid hands to hug him with. He reminded me of an abandoned puppy in a pound that nobody wanted, because all the poor other puppies were cuter and better house trained. I regretted trying to drag him into my problems. I never thought what it must be like. I can go, I offered. Disappointment hit me, but I intended to leave if he wanted me to. No, he protested. I mean, you're okay for a ghost. Besides, I have something to tell you. What? I asked. You were right. It wasn't an accident. Someone killed you. At least that's what the police report says. I suspected my death was a murder, but I had to ask. Who would want to kill me? I can't imagine, he replied, going back to his sarcastic self. You're such pleasant company when you're not walking into people's homes and demanding help. And that's chapter 2. If you want to buy Ghost of Me, it's available on Amazon. You can order it through Waterstones. It's on ebook at Nook and in lots of different formats as well. And I'll post all the links later. Okay, thanks for listening. Bye.